Hello and welcome everybody to this year's wrap-up of what Triple Fake Racing have done this year. This year as a team we decided we weren't going to do the 24 Hours of Lemons series. That was partly for two reasons. The first reason is they'd moved it to Morgan Park, which is a 500-kilometre round trip for us, and also I didn't have enough drivers that were going to commit to doing the series, so this year we decided we were going to concentrate on doing the Nottingham Grand Prix again, and another series called the Indianapolis 500 that Queensland Racelays were going to run, but sadly didn't get enough numbers to make it worthwhile, so they cancelled it. I'll start this year off with just going through what we did at the Nottingham Grand Prix this year. So round one we had our four regular drivers, which was Phil, Dave, myself and Dan, and in round one we managed to do 271 laps. We finished the day in first place, and we were 11 laps ahead of car 318, which was in second place. And sadly these are the only real photos we got, because one thing we're not very good at is taking photos. And for round two, again, I must apologise, these are the only photos we got of the car and some of us. After the end of that round, we were 33 laps ahead of car 318, which again was our nearest competitor. We ran no problems at all during the day, and again we finished in first place on the day, even though there's no real official winner. And coming into round three, again, apologise, this is the only decent photo we've got from that round. We decided we'd run the Elantra in this round, mainly because we had prepared the car to do the Lakeside 300, which sadly that was cancelled. We had some minor problems in round three. We had some radio dramas. It turns out the radio in the car has decided not to work properly anymore, and it took us about 5 laps to sort that out to a point where we could at least talk to the driver in the car that the driver couldn't talk back, and this is important because of the breakout times. Also, by the time we got to round three, we were 33 laps in front of our nearest competitor. We decided we didn't really need to push the car quite as hard as we had in the past, or drive as long as we needed to in the past, so we took it a little easier that day. Anyway, still on the day we managed to do 262 laps, which put us now 52 laps ahead of car 318, which was still our closest competitor on laps for the series. We finished second on the day to car, it's a Ford Focus, which was, it runs two numbers, 171 or 71. It had 171 on it that day, so they actually come first on the day and beat us, but we really weren't overly concerned about that because we were playing the long game here. Okay, in round four, we decided we would stick with the Elantra. The main reason is it was pretty much ready. It didn't need a lot of effort to get it ready to take it out again. The XL would have needed a lot more work to put it back on the track for the last round. And also this round, we only had two regular drivers, which were myself and Dan. So we welcomed to the team two guys that David and I had met down in South Australia. Their names were Nick and Matt. These two guys put a car together to drive at the Bend Motorsport Park in the 24 Hours of Lemons world record attempt to get the most amount of cars on the track, and they enjoyed the day as well. And unfortunately, this car just seems to have a little bit of bad luck attached to it, I think. While Nick was driving after lunch, car got out of control in front of him and he crashed into it, sadly. And the most important thing, Nick was okay. The people in the other car were okay too. There's a little bit of damage on the car, but we managed to get the car back out on the track, and we still managed to finish the day. One of the other eventful things that happened that day, there was a really big storm came across Lakeside, and it flooded part of the track, and it also flooded our pit bay quite badly, as you can see there. Anyway, they did cancel the race temporarily while this was going on, which actually gave us time to put our wet weather tyres back on the car, and I drove the car in the wet, and so did Dan, and the car was a rocket in the wet. So even after all that, we still managed fourth on the day. We did 212 laps, and again, car 71 or 171. It did the most laps again on that day, so well done to those guys. But overall, we still won the series when we consider it is a 24-hour event, which it's the way it's promoted. So we still finished 50 laps ahead of car 318. And that's our trophy we got for Tough Enough for 24 hours. And there were only, I think, 4 or 5 cars that actually managed, or teams that managed to finish every single round, and we were one of them. And I think we're the only team that's actually finished and won all 3 of these events that they've run so far. And that's a wrap for the Nodder Grand Prix for 2019. That's just a photo of us. So on the left is Matt, then we have Dan, then we have myself, and then we have Nick. This is just a slide of what we have done over the last 3 years as a team. The Nodder Grand Prix results doesn't really say it on there, but we have been the first car. We've either done the most laps, which is the way it worked in the second and the third events, and the very first year they ran that, it was also based on the cars that finished every event, and we were the only car that finished every event in the very first one they ran. I'll just now move on to talk about some of the other things we did during the year. I decided I wanted to run in the Willowbank 300 this year, mainly because it's one of the things I've always wanted to do. And so Dan was he co-drove with me, and he drove exceptionally well. So thank you, Dan, for driving with me that weekend. We managed to get into the top 10 shootout, and I drove in that, not because I'm faster, it's just because I wanted to do it, something that not many people can say they've done, a top 10 shootout. And really my goal for the weekend was not to finish last, and to at least beat one of the XL Cup cars, which were in our class, and we were in class Division 7. And over the weekend, Dan and I got a sense that a lot of other people driving in the class, or in the race, didn't really think we should have been there. We just got that feeling that, well, we were there in a lemon spec car, and it genuinely is a lemon spec car, other than a few safety modifications to meet Queensland Raceway's Level 3 event racing rules. Anyway, by the end of the weekend, these people weren't laughing quite so much, because we managed to finish first in our class by 4 laps, and we also finished the race 4th outright. Now, I'm also not a fool. Only 12 cars entered the event, but as they say, to finish first you have to finish. So I was exceptionally proud of the way our little team did at a serious motorsport event, up against some very, very expensive cars and some very, very well tuned and very quick cars that were in our class. Another thing we did sort of as a team, David and I flew down to the South Australian 24 Hours of Lemon event at the Bend Motorsport Park, and this was meant to be a world record attempt to get the most amount of cars on a track at one time. Yes, so David and I joined this team. It's called Night Fury, and Nick owned the car, and Matt was the other guy down there driving with him as well. It was a little bit of a last minute thing, David and I going down, and we flew down in David's little plane, and for me that was a pretty big adventure, because I'm not a good flyer and I don't like flying in little planes, but 6 hours each way in a little plane wasn't too bad. And I think 6 teams from Queensland went down all up. There's a photo of a few of the cars that sort of all went down on the same transporter. Even our old friends from Queensland Raceway the years before, the guys in the F250 Ute, which turned out not to be too bad of guys after all that. Unfortunately, after about probably 6 hours of racing, the car got #1 piston put through the side of the block, which for people who don't know anything about cars, that's pretty bad. It happened while David was driving it, unfortunately. And unfortunately, that was the end of our race. It happened on Saturday afternoon sometime. I think the car was in 29th position out of the 70 cars that started the race. Sad end to a weekend, so we got to come home a little bit early for that weekend, which was Bathurst weekend, so if there was a silver lining to anything, we got to watch Bathurst on Sunday. But sadly, the car broke. It was really unrepairable. We would have helped change the engine if we could have got another one at a reasonable price, but just down at the Bend Motorsport Park, sort of miles from anywhere really. They couldn't repair it, unfortunately, but we still enjoyed the time down there. It was nice to drive around a track that had more than 6 corners. The track had 35 corners and was 7.77 kilometres long. And to be honest with you, if we go and do that again, I'm probably going to need a GPS, because I probably did 20 laps of that track. I was taking just over 5 minutes to do a lap in that car, and I couldn't remember which corner was coming next. Anyway, it was a good weekend, even with the engine failure, and I'd like to thank Nick and Matt for allowing us to come down there and drive. Some of the other things I've done throughout the year, I've helped Darren Curry with his XL Cup racing. Darren also ran in one of the CAMS X3 series this year, and I was out there helping him as well for that. Also, Darren and Caden drove in the 2 XL endurance races this year, and I was there helping them out as well. And in the first XL endurance race that was held this year, I was also lucky enough to meet a young bloke named Jordan Boys. And I got to meet him because I was helping him and the guy driving with him, whose name was Chris, who helped us out a few years ago at a Lemons race. And Chris now owns my old XL from a few years ago. And I watched Jordan Boys put that car into second position at one stage, and he was up against some really, really fast XLs. And my old XL would be by far the oldest car that's running in that series. And from what I understand, Jordan had never driven an XL in his life. So my prediction is watch out for this kid. He's quick. He also won his last 2 Dunlop Series races this year in the V8 Light Series. And my prediction is, I reckon you'll see Jordan Boys on the podium at Bathurst for the next 5 years if he gets a break in a good car. And that's pretty much a wrap for what we did this year. Just like to thank the guys and girls at Tyre Power at Geebung for helping us out with our tyres and wheel alignments and things like that. Scott's Rods, who has done some things for me mechanically over the year. Some other people I'd like to thank also, Stephen, who brings our cars out to the track for us sometimes with his tilt tray. Of course, my wife Karen for helping us out. Owen, my son, who comes and helps us at the track, and also David's wife Lisa, who does an exceptionally good job at the timing in the Nottingham Grand Prix, which is a pretty thankless job, I can tell you, and a pretty difficult job to do because she wasn't there in the last round and we really struggled with it. Anyway, thanks everybody. We will see you next year. Bye.